Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of BlazerMetrics. I am Nathan Bishop, joined by Larry, TB Pup, and we're here because we wanted to jump into the controversial topic of, is Joe Cronin a good GM? What's your first impression, Larry? Just like before we get into anything, what do you think? Do you think he's a good GM? Is he a bad GM? Is he kind of just in the middle?
Yeah, I think it's probably still too early. He came in. It was tough to get excited about his first trades because he was clearing cap space or getting under the luxury tax. We got basically nothing for Rocco and Powell. And I think we've discussed this, that it felt like he jumped the gun a bit. There was still a week left before the trade deadline. So we had nothing for that. The CJ trade actually wasn't horrible in that you got rid of CJ's contract. You weren't going to get anything back as good. But there have been some pieces that have come from that. Still coming, still developing, whatever. I think that the high point has to be the scouting staff he's put around him to get the pieces in the draft the last 2 years that he has. I think that's gone for where they picked about as well as you could have hoped for.
Yeah.
I would have liked maybe a little more size at 23 this year, but all in all, that part's been pretty solid. So now what he has to do is prove that he can pull off, a big trade, not a salary dump, not getting nothing for something, actually getting something that he's not going to win. See, here's what he has to do. He has to temper the loss. We're not going to get anyone as good as Dame. But is it something that realistically can be, quote, sold to the fans as this is part of the next wave, the future, the next iteration of young ball players, and we have pieces to go around them? Or we have pieces that we can use to add something to them maybe later on. There's a draft pick a couple years down the road. Who knows what that means to this team, but maybe we can use it in a trade. And that's what he's going to have to do, and that's what he hasn't done yet. It almost feels like some of the things that were done were either just giveaways, or like Larry Nance. Did Nance have to be included in the CJ trade? Could we have got something for him, sending him somewhere else? He didn't need to be included. He was just thrown in.
So why don't we go through these one at a time? Because I feel like, he's only been general manager for like a year and a half, or a little over a year and a half. But I mean, he's done a ton of stuff in that span of time just because of the nature of rebuilding the team. So, right off the bat, and arguably I think his most controversial trade is the Los Angeles Clippers trade. So this is, and you kind of already mentioned it, but so this is what the trade was. It was Robert Covington and Norman Powell for Eric Bledsoe, Keon Johnson, Justice Winslow, and a 2025 second-round pick. And
two of those pieces, Bledsoe was waived, and Winslow has yet to be re-signed. So as of now, all you got out of that was
Keon Johnson. Yeah.
And a second-round pick from Detroit that you used as part of what you sent back to Detroit for Jeremy Grant.
Yeah, so, I hated this trade when it first happened. I would say arguably it's his worst transaction that he has done, followed shortly by Gary Payton, but we'll get into that in a little bit. But I don't really care about Covington. Covington was a free agent that summer. He hasn't hardly played. He's clearly over the hill. I mean, I don't know what happened to that dude, but he fell off a cliff. Like he went from being a very useful player in his first year with the Blazers to just nothing. I mean, he was terrible. So trading him didn't bother me. I probably would have just let him expire. I didn't think he really had much value. Powell,
I think the hard part with that is what we gave up to get him and then got nothing from him. So yes.
Yeah, 2 years later. That was
what we gave up for him was quite a bit, and then to get nothing out of it felt.
But that's on Neil, and,
Right.
and honestly, that's a Neil O'Shea thing. And so really, whether we trade him, there's no way we would have re-signed him, so it's like, it's kind of just cutting your losses. But Powell's what pissed me off, because it was like, he was on a reasonable contract. He's a productive player. We were playing him out of position. I just really hated...
Which we do.
Which we love to do. We love to get short guards and then play them out of position. I don't know why, but it's the most Portland thing ever these days. But, Powell is still a productive player. He had a very good year for the Clippers last year.
Lit us up.
Yeah, he's a very good player off the bench. He's a serviceable shooting guard. He's not a star, but he's not paid like a star. So it's like, I really thought it was stupid to trade him and not get really anything in return. Keon Johnson has been a total bust. Justice Winslow can't stay healthy. We cut Bledsoe, so it's like, we got nothing for Powell after trading Gary Trent for him, Once again, a Neil trade, and it's like... but
and Joe was stuck picking up some of the pieces for that, so it's hard to fault him too much when those first two were directives. I doubt that those were really, this is what I want to do today, is give all these pieces away.
Yeah.
He was told, you got to get under the luxury tax.
And I don't think he gets the job, right? He doesn't get the job if he's unwilling to do that.
Right. So teams knew that we weren't going to have a lot of leverage, but it felt like we could have waited a little longer to maybe get something else thrown in. I mean, we got nothing thrown in for that one at all.
It was a week before the deadline, so it was like they didn't wait at all. So I hated that trade, but in hindsight, I don't know what value Powell would have now. I mean, there was a rumor that the Clippers were looking to try to move him because of the basically the extremely punitive salary cap that we have now, and there's just not much interest. So it's like there's this huge overflow, this saturation of the market with short scoring guards.
Shortish scoring guards. There's plenty of them.
There's too many.
There's plenty to be had.
Yeah.
So I think why I wanted, like at 23, I was hoping to get a little more height because we got a wing kind of, we'll see, but we're so
short,
bereft of height. Is like we got to have somewhere.
Yeah, Leonard Miller was there. Like he was there. He was right there.
Miller was there. Najee was there. Maybe guys that aren't as accomplished as Murray, to be sure, but potential-wise and size-wise, there was a lot more length. There was a lot more height. There was, some things that we just don't have. So, we'll see how Murray does. And, anything at 23 is a bit of a crapshoot.
And then we also got a 2025 second-round pick, which I think went to Detroit, if I'm reading this right.
It went back to Detroit. I think it was
Yeah.
Back.
Okay, so then we have the New Orleans trade. So we sent out CJ, Larry Nance Jr., and the effervescent Tony Snell to the Pelicans for Nickeil Alex. These are players I honestly don't know much about. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Josh Hart, which was a nice pickup, Didi Lozada, Thomas Satoransky, a 2022 first-round pick, which we used to get Grant, a 2026 second-round pick, which was later selected, which I think that's probably... I'm looking at your little flow chart here, but I wonder if that was...
Well, maybe the 2022 was conditional, so we didn't get it, it turned into the 2025, and that's what we got. Grant.
No, the second-round pick, though. That was... did that end up being Jabari Walker? I'm not sure. I don't see what ended up happening with that. Not sure. Anyway, I think they're pick swaps, so it's slight difference. Anyway, kind of a tiny little detail. So let's see here. Yeah, it's a 2026, and then New Orleans also received a trade exception. Portland, yeah. So basically we got the trade exception and the pick that we used to get Grant. So it was essentially Josh Hart and Jeremy Grant for CJ, Larry Nance Jr., and Tony Snell.
Which we took a couple of those pieces and moved again for someone else later, which was basically nothing. It was more dump stuff.
Yeah, and then, Hart essentially became the 23rd pick and Matisse Thybulle, basically. I mean, if you really want to, well, and we also got Cam Reddish out of it, but Cam Reddish is now a Laker. So, I mean, that trade didn't really bother me. I don't think CJ really had the market that we would have hoped. Maybe that he would have had it, several years earlier. Giving up Nance was kind of a...
I didn't get why he was thrown in for that.
Yeah, probably more cost-cutting, right?
Other ways to make that work, and Nance was at least a somewhat serviceable piece.
That we wasted first-round picks on again.
That we, again, wasted first-round picks on.
Mm-hmm. So,
again, that wasn't Cronin, but it was the sunk cost into Covington 2 picks, Nance a pick, which we still haven't conveyed to Chicago. So it felt like we ended up, net sum were way in the hole.
Yeah.
Way in the hole.
And then there was a Utah trade where we sent out, some of the pieces that we got from New Orleans to Utah for Joe Ingles and a second-round pick from Memphis.
And Elijah Hughes, who we waived both of the players. Yeah. And the second-round pick we used, I think that
part of a trade. We used it as part of a trade later, I think.
Was that part of a trade?
So we used it on Gabriel Procito, and he went out as part of a trade. He was out as part of the Jeremy Grant trade. Right. So that was kind of nothing burger trade. I don't really know. I think there was just a few pieces. It was probably about cutting more cost, honestly. Then you have the Detroit trade, which we've kind of already talked about. Where we got Grant, and then the Hart trade.
That was good. A future first. It's Milwaukee's. If Giannis is still there, that pick probably isn't going to be worth a lot. And it helped that he wanted to come here because of Dame and their relationship. Awesome, that helped to get it done. I don't care how. It got done. Coffee's for closers. So a cup for Joe on that one.
Yep. Yeah, and I always kind of said I was going to reserve my opinion on it until whether or not Grant signed. Because if Grant had just walked for nothing, right, that would have been a lot of resources to lose for nothing. Right. So, he kept him. Relatively high contract, but overall, honestly, his contract is pretty in line with the position that he plays and the player that he is. Because if you look at guys that have similar contracts, they're all kind of... The only real wart that he has is the fact that he doesn't rebound at all,
Right. He's the highest paid, lowest rebounding power forward in the league.
He's terrible at rebounding.
But he scores, he plays some defense.
Yeah.
You have to have some veterans on this team, so that's fine.
Yep. And then we have the Hart trade, which people tend to forget that Thybulle came over as part of that trade. But, we traded Hart. We ended up with Cam Reddish, who we just let walk, Thybulle, and the 23rd pick. So, and then I don't know, a couple other resources that we like. Ryan Arcidiacono. I can never pronounce that news name. Arcidiacono. I can't.
Arcidiacono.
There you go. There, yeah. That guy's name just gives me a headache.
I'm Italian. It helps.
There you go. I don't hate that trade. I think there's a lot of argument over whether or not Hart was going to resign.
Well, he wasn't. So you got Matisse, who you've re-signed, and the pick, which turned into Chris Murray. So Murray and Thybulle for Hart, that's not bad for a guy you weren't going to... That's not bad at all.
And Thybulle is probably going to be making about half as much as Hart because there's rumors... I've heard multiple different sources report that he's going to probably sign in the neighborhood of like $20 million a year. So And I think Thibel's around 11 or something like that. So, I mean, you're talking about half the cost, and Thibel's younger, too. So, Hart, on paper, is a better offensive player, but he just wouldn't shoot in Portland. I don't know.
It was so weird how he just went from where when all the players were out, not this last year, but the year before, and they were tanking, and didn't he go off for a 50
Oh, yeah.
spot?
Maybe 45? Not quite that much, but yeah, he was on fire.
45, and he was lighting it up, and he was shooting. He's aggressive. The next season, teams were playing 4-on-5. They just he would not shoot.
Yeah.
And then when he finally did, people are screaming at it. It was a very halted, hesitant, not confident shot.
Yeah.
It wasn't working out. So that one I'm fine with. That's a good trade for what we got, and we weren't bringing him back. That was great. We got something out of what would have been nothing. And, where some of these guys, nothing. Reddish got waived. Archie Diacono got waived. Ante Tomic will never play. We got a couple of those guys. We got Ismael Kamagate in the Grant trade. He's not going to suit up either. So that one's not bad. The CJ trade, not bad. The stuff for Utah was a swap of guys that weren't going to do anything. So fine, that was a nothing burger. It's the Covington Powell one that wasn't good, offset by the Grant one that was good. So far we're a net 0, or maybe. I think it depends on how negative you treat the Covington Powell trade versus how positive you treat the Grant trade.
I'm almost at the point where I look at that trade as just breaking even, because to me, I don't fault Joe for having to make that trade because I don't think he gets the job if he doesn't do it.
No, he's under orders.
There's one more trade that we haven't listed yet, and we haven't gone into the free agent, so we haven't technically acquired him yet, but the Gary Payton trade, and I actually give Joe a lot of credit for this because his predecessor never would have done this, ever.
Oh.
Never. It would not have happened. He would have stuck with Gary Payton until the end of the contract. But Joe admitted a mistake and dumped him for 5 second-round picks and Kevin Knox, who we've already waived. So,
right. And listen, the fact that he dumped him was a win.
Yeah, he was
almost
not.
Didn't matter what you got back.
Yeah,
I kind of wanted to take a shot on Weissman just to see. He's a number 2 pick. That's a bust, but maybe is he worth, a low lottery pick if you can get him to play and get him to learn and not have someone like Draymond Green just beating him over the head constantly, which apparently is not a small club. Draymond Green, Jordan Poole, and now who's he got? Kuminga. He's having issues with Kuminga. So if Draymond Green didn't like Weissman, join the club. Apparently you weren't the only one. It got rid of Payton. They got something for one of those picks already didn't work out. There was a bunch of conditions on them. We were never going to get all 5.
Yeah.
Maybe we get 2.
But I've looked. No, I think it'll be more than that because let's see here. So we have the second-round pick from Atlanta, which I don't see any protections on it.
That's conditional.
So is it? Oh, condition. Yeah. What is the condition? It doesn't say anything on it, though.
I didn't put the conditions in what I sent.
I know, but I'm looking at...
They're all conditional except for the last one in 2028, which is Golden State's pick. That's the one we will get. We'll likely get one of the other ones. You would think you'll get at least one, hopefully 2.
So I'm looking at Spotrac. The 2024 Atlanta pick does not say conditional on it at all. The 2025 pick does.
I pulled that off Real GM, I believe, if I can remember back.
Okay.
I have contractor head right now. All I can hear is jackhammers in the background. That's for you, Sly Poker Dog.
Okay, so 2024, at least on Spotrac, does not have any conditions on it.
Okay.
The Charlotte pick says more favorable of Charlotte and Minnesota than other... I can't even read this. It's such small writing. That one is conditional. I'm not 100% sure on that one. It looks like we owe one to Milwaukee, I think. maybe. The way they have this laid out is confusing. The 2025 Atlanta pick, though, so the condition is if their pick is between 31 and 40, it goes to us. Right. If it's between 41 and 60, it goes to Oklahoma City.
Right. So we've got just a little better than a 50-50 chance of getting that, depending on how their record is. Mm-hmm. One of them already we didn't get, which was a swap, because we were
better. We were worse than them. Yeah.
How did that work? We were worse. So
we were worse, so we didn't swap. Yeah.
So we didn't swap.
Then you have a 2026 conditional Memphis pick. The way that one is set up is that if they are between 31 and 42, it goes to Utah. If they're between, which I actually like this because it's Memphis, they're a decent team. If they're between 43 and 60, it's our pick. Okay. So I like the odds of that one. I'm not sure about.
But it's a bad, it's a later.
Yeah, it's not great,
and that's fine. The win was getting out of the Peyton thing. He didn't want to be here. I've told you what he told a friend of mine right after he signed, and it just went. They told me that, and I'm like, well, that's odd. I wonder if that affects what he does here. And it was obvious from day one.
Yeah, he didn't want to be here.
That's why he told her that.
Yeah.
Okay, it makes perfect sense now.
Yeah. He didn't even make sense as a signing. I don't know why Joe... he's a really good defender, but he just didn't make any sense. We didn't need guards,
I think he was trying to get anything that would help. Back then, it was still Dame had been chirping about, well, I might look at going, and so it got someone in here that was a defender, which we needed.
Yeah, it was a name.
We didn't need his skill. We needed a defender that was 5 inches taller, but
yeah.
So, in that, I'm fine with that. I almost, if we didn't get anything, we got out from under the contract. He didn't want to be here. He wasn't going to play. Wasn't going to play hard for very long. Fine, it's off the books. That's a win. And that's, again, admitting it didn't go well, done with it. Maybe we pick up a couple of late second-round picks and hope Schmitz is still here to find gold. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, so if I'm reading this right, I'm pretty sure we get the 2024 Hawks and Hornets picks, but our pick actually is going to Milwaukee. In 2025, our pick goes to Sacramento. And in 2026, our pick goes to Detroit. So we don't own our own second-round picks for the next 3 years. Yeah.
Right. We don't have any
but we have Atlanta and Charlotte this coming next offseason. And then I would say, I think it's unlikely we get the 2025 Hawks pick. I don't think they're going to be that bad. I would be surprised if they're that bad.
Well, they'd have to be top, 5 or 6 in their conference?
Whereas I think there's a good chance we get the Memphis pick in 2026. So I think we might end up with 3 out of those next 4 picks.
Okay.
If we
get that and don't have Peyton, that still a win.
And then we also have the 2028 Golden State pick. So they gave us 1 pick.
Which honestly, by then
might be pretty good.
That might be a low 30s. Mid to low 30s pick. That might not be bad at all.
Then we actually owe our 2029 pick to Philly. We've sent out all of our second round picks over the last few years. They're just gone. So
this replenished us a little because there were so many conditions on so many of them. Maybe we get a couple and it's better than nothing.
Yeah. Neil just emptied our assets. I mean, just completely. And not even for really good players. I mean,
that's the thing. If you're doing it for an actual player that makes a difference, that's one thing. But if you're all those first round picks that went out for all those players that did nothing, second round picks. I mean, we look at who we've drafted in the last 5 years. It's not pretty. Ant and Little, and that's it since CJ.
Yeah. Well,
really? I mean.
Yeah, so I'll get into our picks after, I don't even really want to go back to Neil. But so he's actually, here's the thing. I kind of had to water down the free agent signings a little bit because we've signed so many, trash players at the end of the season, to try to like tank. So I kind of left a lot of guys off the list because I was like, I don't want to get into Skylar May, but
right. I didn't put a ton of those players on there because they were just
they were just filler. But
they filled that purpose.
I put Eubanks on there. I thought Eubanks was a nice pickup. He was one of the guys that stuck. And even though he wasn't a world beater, he served his purpose over the last couple of years. So I thought picking up Eubanks was not a bad move. Couple years. So really his first free agent period, he re-signed Nurk to 4 years, $70 million, which
the years, the money I was okay with, I guess. I thought that should have been a 2+1 or something, but they got him to sit out, so I guess that was a penalty for having him sit out. Same with Grant.
But it's also like it was a Dame tax because we couldn't even really afford to let him walk because then Dame would be pissed off. And these are the kind of things that people don't necessarily take into consideration when we're talking about Dame. Because do you really think that we give him $70 million, 4 years, $70 million, if he's not best friends with Lillard? I just don't.
After they asked him to sit out, that was probably a promise to clutch. If that's who Nurk would have.
I would have played him. What would have happened? You really think Nurk would have kept us from tanking? I mean, I just don't.
Now that I agree with. I'm like, you would just play him and let him
play,
and don't make any promises.
Yeah, I think.
You want to sign him for Dame? Fine, sign him for less money and less years. Don't make a promise that we're going to throw the full 4-year boat. That's been my issue with RGMs Neil did that with Harkless and Aminu and Myers Leonard and Turner and on and on. Who's making you sign him to the full length of a contract?
Especially
that's what
when there's not anybody else bidding. All reports, you're bidding against yourself. And that's the thing about Simons. I think Simons was more egregious than Nurk. And I don't necessarily think that Simons' contract is bad because he's cheaper than Tyler Hero. But nobody was coming after him. So who were we bidding against? It just doesn't make sense. So I don't necessarily think his contract is bad. And I do think there's a good chance he earns it this next year, playing alongside Scoot, but at least this time around, he kind of let Thibault go out there and it's like maybe he learned his lesson because he was like, all right, man, just go find a contract. I'm not going to offer you anything. We'll see what you get and then we'll probably match. So I thought he did a way better job with Thibault this year because he was like, no, go find out what you're worth.
Thibault's a very good contract. It's in the middle. It's not, up in that 25, 30, 40 range. It's one of those middle ones that you can bind with something else to make a deal work, and it's enough money. It's not, these rookie scale guys that are 3, 4, 5 million. It's enough to where it will make a difference in a trade.
Yeah.
So I love the Thibault signing, the contract amount. He's limited offensively. He's very good defensively. Part-time starter, maybe. Fine.
Yeah. So I really like the Thibault signing. I think we need him and Grant to go with all the kiddies that we've got going into next season. I think signing Dame. So last summer he also signed Dame to an extra 2 years, $121.7 million, to push him out to 3 or 4 years. I can't remember what his current salary or years are. I think maybe that 4th year is a player option.
For who?
Dame.
Oh, yes, I believe so too.
Because he gave Dame that 2-year extension last summer. That's for $121.7 million, which I actually think was a really smart move because now we have leverage because Dame would have been is he a free agent? Would he have been a free agent after this season or the next one? I'd have to go look and see what his current contract looks like. But let's see. I can actually see that because I'm kind of curious. So Dame.
So he's 48 next year. I think it would have been at the end of next year he would have been a free agent.
Yeah. Because he's at.
Because he signed his extension and it jumps up from 48, goes from 45 to 48, then it jumps to 58, and then to 3.
Yeah, so he would have potentially been a free agent after next season because he had 2 years left on his current 4-year contract, but the fourth year was a player option, and he exercised that option. So potentially he could have been a free agent after this season, and then Cronin gave him 2 more years, so which goes out to 26, 27. So I mean, at least we have control over Dame, and as much as it sucks right now, we can say like, nah, man, we're not going to trade you unless we feel like it's a good deal. And there's nothing Dame can really do about it. So I don't hate that signing. I'm hoping that we can get somewhat decent value out of Dame.
Yeah, I mean, and moving off of him, I mean, in that 4th year, if he were to, opt in, which I can't imagine why he wouldn't. I doubt anyone else is paying him that much at 36 or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, he and Grant are almost $100 million between the two of them. Now,
Yeah.
I know the cap's going up, but it's going to be $100 million for players that are 33 and 36.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Okay. Well, Dame is Dame, and I don't expect he's going to be on the team a lot longer. So the next up is GP2. And we've already covered this a little bit. I hated the signing when it happened. I hated it more, through the season where he was hardly playing. I just give him a lot of credit for cutting bait. That's really the big takeaway.
Absolutely.
He cut bait, recognized his mistake, and was just like, I'm done with you, dude, and sent him out.
Well, and that was there anyone in Portland other than maybe some really diehard Beaver fans, and even most of them by then, like, okay, it's time for him to go. Was there anyone unhappy to see him go?
No, I don't think so. Did he ever get? Did he come back at any point? I feel like he didn't play because I'm still waiting for him to get booed. Like, I think it's coming.
I thought he played part of one game or something.
Did he? I don't remember, but
they blew us out, so he didn't play a lot of minutes in the second half.
Talk about burning a legacy in a state that you played. I mean, it's just like, wow, dude, you really,
there's
really
not
don't
a
care.
lot of players who would think out of the 3 or how many NBA players are in the NBA from U of O and OSU that Eubanks would be the most beloved. Peyton is hated, and we don't want Brooks here.
Yep.
I mean, that's because we love our own, but we want nothing to do with most of them out of that group.
Yep. Next would be we signed Baji to a 2-way. I'm still kind of, I like his potential. I think he's got some promise. He's very raw.
He's just, you can see his length, and when he gets in the right position and gets under, gets planted, gets his weight under him. I mean, he is very long. He alters shots, blocks shots, and then he'll be completely lost on the next possession. Doesn't hurt that it seems like no one on this team can throw a decent lob pass, and it's been that way for some time. And so he's a project. Give him, play him 30 plus minutes a game in the G League, then have him come practice with the big club, see what you've got in a year or two, when he turns 21, 22. He really hasn't played ball that long.
Yeah. No,
he needs time on the court.
He's very raw. So I don't mind that one. Nas, 4-year, $28 million.
That's fine.
That's a cheap contract,
It's a cheap contract, and it's about right since he never plays. So,
yep. I'm hoping he's productive this year because we really need.
I think, don't we all hope that, because he's got skills this club needs.
Yeah.
He's a bigger body. He's athletic. He can defend. He can knock down a shot. He just can't stay on the floor.
Yep. Next would be Grant, 5 years, 160. I know we kind of covered this before, but we needed to keep him. We could not let him walk out the door for nothing. It just
we couldn't. Him getting a 50% raise. I guess that's just where the cap money is, but that's a lot. Because there's going to be games, how many games this year? I wonder what the over-under is that his counterpart doesn't out-rebound him.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
regardless
he's
regardless if they're making 30 million or if they're making 2.
yep. I think we're really gonna hurt for rebounding. But you know, I actually really like I think Scoot and Shaden both crashed the boards really well. Gosh, Shaden gets up there, man. He had some rebounds during summer league where I was just like, "Geez, dude."
He is up. His waist is up at guys' heads when he goes for rebounds sometimes.
It kind of scares me. I'm like, "Hey, man,
Yeah.
let's relax on that a little bit because we don't need you to come down on somebody's foot."
He does a really good job of getting in between bodies to get to the basket for rebounds, defensive, offensive. He's slithery,
Yeah.
and so he doesn't seem to get hit hard on box outs, or he doesn't get bodied a whole lot. He's just coming down from a long way up. You hope he doesn't step on someone's ankle or something.
Yeah, that's what scares me. But I honestly, unless the team just clicks and Grant fits in well, I think he'll be traded. I think when the deadline comes around, I think a playoff team, I could really see him fitting in on Cleveland. If they haven't already traded Jared Allen, I could really see some type of deal where Grant goes to Cleveland, Allen and Filler comes back. I think that would fill some need for us. If Grant were a couple years younger, I could see him still being part of the window. Because LaMarcus was 27 when we got Dame. And
But because Dame had been in college for 4 years,
Yeah.
it was only a 5-year difference.
yeah,
Because Scoot went, is basically his senior year and then his freshman year, 19 going on 20. There's a 9-year gap. It's almost double what LaMarcus.
it's a long
and-
time. 29 is a long time.
It's a much bigger gap. So he's probably out. If not this trade deadline,
Next
either the
summer.
summer or next trade
Yeah.
deadline for sure.
Yep. Unless, like I said, unless we just like click and it's insane and the team is playing way above what we think. I mean, I could see a weird scenario where it's like, maybe, it's actually working really well. But I think making sure that we weren't losing that asset for nothing was so important. After we basically would have traded CJ for nothing. Thibault, that would have been it. CJ and Nance for Thibault. And that would have just, and Murray. That would have been a pretty hard pill to swallow.
Well, and what if, to your point, what if things do click a little bit? I mean, we're not going to compete for a playoff or even a play-in. I can't imagine. But what if we were, just 3 or 4 games out of a play-in, which doesn't have to be very good. We were at play-in status last year right up until the last, couple of weeks. Even as bad as we were trying to tank, we still weren't that far out of the play-in. What if it clicks, a little more energy and a little more athleticism, and you're like, okay, we don't want to stunt these guys. We want them getting used to winning, but if we could add Cooper Flagg to this group, what do we do?
It's going to be interesting to see how they navigate the next couple years. And really, the last free agent signing was Thibault, and that was 3 years, $33 million. I think that's a really good price for somebody that made one or two all defensive teams. I can't remember if it was one or two, but
and I think he even got some votes this year, so it's not like, and that's incredible for given the Blazers team ranking defensively. I mean, they were terrible, and he's always having to pick someone else up, or they're out of rotation and he's got to cover somebody. I mean, it will be not that Scoot and Sharp are not going to be good defenders, and Ant's terrible. Ant's one of the worst defenders in the league for his position. It is brutally bad.
Yeah.
Sharp still gets lost. Scoot tries hard, but they're not going to be good defensively. So Thibault's impact on what you have to is going to be even bigger, because he's going to be the only defensive player. Grant's a help defender. He's not bad. Nurk, I can't believe he'll be here, but if for some reason he is, that's some defense. I mean, they're better with Nurk on the floor than when he wasn't, covering up for all the guys that it's been our guard play for forever. Our guards have been defensive civs, and I don't see that changing anytime soon.
No.
But maybe at least we get a little more effort and energy out of it now. This looks like they're trying harder. And to be fair, I think Dame tried a little harder the last year and a half, but it'd been so long that it had been really poor. It's like, well, okay, maybe too little, too late. I don't know. It's tough to erase 10 years of defensive habits in one season.
Yeah, and I just, I think he's a good locker room guy. Everything I've heard about him is he's a really good locker room guy, and, he's 26, so having somebody like that on the team I think is just really important. And he's not overpaid. So I really like that signing. I think he still fits the window because 26 isn't that old, and so that's it. That's all the free agents, keeping out all of the the fluff. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the picks because we kind of already, there's not really a lot. We've already talked about these guys in the past. You've got Shaden, you've got Jabari, you've got Scoot, you got Chris Murray and Ryan Rupert. And we've kind of already covered those guys in the past. I really feel like so far.
Did you see our first preseason game?
Is against
Rayon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, against the Breakers.
Memorial Welcome Back Tour.
Yeah.
His old team.
That'll be funny. We killed. What was it? Was it one of the Israeli teams? I can't remember who we.
Maccabi?
Yeah, they were so bad, and we just crushed them.
The team that Shaden just went off.
Shaden just went crazy. Yeah. I feel like the draft has actually been Cronin's biggest strength so far. I mean,
for what it's been really good. It is, unfortunately, much like Olshay's, bereft of size.
Yeah.
It's still a lot of small. Now, I guess the guys are getting a little bigger. Rupert and Murray are a little bit, they're not small guards, so at least it's trending in the right direction, I guess. And I'll take anything.
Yeah, I think pretty clearly if you look at that list, they're drafting BPA. They're going best player available. And I think when you're rebuilding, that's why I really kind of been feeling like we've been doing some kind of shadow rebuild for the past couple years because, I mean, when you need talent, taking the best player available is the safest move. You're not drafting for need, but going for skill. Sharp has a lot of potential. Scoot could be a superstar. Murray, I think he projects out to be a decent role player. Maybe a starter. It's kind of hard to say.
If he's a starter, he better be your fifth best starter.
Yeah, I'm not seeing the consistency from three that he would need to be a starter. Like, dude, you got to be a 40% shooter if you're gonna be a 3-and-D wing. You better be nailing those corner threes like crazy. I can't remember who I was listening to, but they were like, if you can be a corner three wing in the NBA, you're set. Like, be a 3-and-D corner shooting wing.
Make some money.
You're set, dude. You're good. You're set for life. So
but it needs to be a higher percentage because I don't see a lot else that he's doing.
No.
Handle wise, facilitating wise.
He doesn't stand out.
No, it's almost like a left-handed slow-mo Kyle Anderson type of player. Could be a glue guy. Could be someone that does a lot of little things, a little bit, Jabari Walker-esque. So now we have two of those guys.
Yeah. Right. So
one of them needs to step up and grow into some type of a role.
Yep. And then Rupert to me is like the Baji of wings. Like they're both just raw. They're extremely raw, but they have great defensive instincts. And I think, you give them a couple years on the remix and you see what you got. And I actually really like Rupert. I think he's got a lot of potential, but he's years away.
The youngest guys in
the
draft.
No, he was the youngest because he literally turned 19 like a week before the draft or something like that. So he was the youngest.
But you can see that length and when he gets some energy and some confidence. So as he gets some confidence, learns, a few veteran moves here or there, what he can get away with, what he can't. I can see that playing on the defensive end, and then he's got to hit a shot, and I think he's going to put the work in. Just enough that I've heard, seen, watched interviews with his coach. that he works hard. He will put in the time. He's got some ability to do some things. It's just he has to have those skills progress to where he can be a legitimate contributor.
Yeah, but he's a couple years away, which is fine. With their being a young team, it's fine to have those kind of projects and bring him back. Let him go play on the remix a little bit. Let him come back, practice with the team, that kind of stuff. So, overall, now we've gone through pretty much everything now. That's the trades, the free agent signings, the picks.
So have we come to a conclusion on what we think of Joe?
It's interesting. I think the way that he has handled this offseason, I used to be a big time Joe Cronin hater. I was drinking the haterade. I was not a fan. I called him Sell Low Joe. I was like, dude, you're killing me. These trades are terrible. The signing of GP2 was terrible. But I really like that he's stuck to his guns about our picks. He won't dump Shaden. He didn't trade the third pick. I felt like he did the right thing there. And he's not just giving away Dame, Well,
and he did, and whoever it was, I think you mentioned this about, some GMs around the league saying, you can't trade this, or if you do, it's got to be for a huge package. You can't just give 3 away. If it was 5, 6, 7, and that's where we'd been, okay, you can trade that. But at 3, you can't do that.
Yeah. So we've got about 15 minutes left. So I wanted to get in a little bit to like the current situation. But yeah, on Sean Hyken's recent podcast, big fan of Sean. I really enjoy listening to his information is really solid. But he said that he had heard reports that essentially before the draft, several small market GMs were calling Joe and being like, dude, you can't just dump this pick for nothing. You've got to. They basically told him it would be malpractice. And then also he said that he was essentially hearing that he's getting pushback from some teams about trading Dame to Miami, because I think that what we're seeing with the new CBA, a lot of these small market teams are trying to band together because they're like, we can't have this. We cannot have players signing for these massive contracts and then bailing on their team a year later, and then demanding where they want to go.
Right, which is the soonest they can go, and then exactly demanding where they can go, and thereby artificially lowering the value.
Yeah.
And so I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case at all, because what leverage do smaller market, non-warm weather teams have? People aren't lining up to go play in Portland or Minnesota or Detroit or any of the cooler places. They want big market, warm weather.
Yeah, and you've got Dame and Harden are essentially acting like they're free agents. You've got Dame saying Miami. You've got Harden saying. I listened to Zach Lowe do a whole thing on Harden, and yeah, they were said he's in a really sticky situation because he's in the he has 1 year left on his contract, but apparently I'd never heard this before. There's a provision in the CBA that if he holds out, and I think what Lowe said was that if he holds out for I might be wrong on this, but if he holds out for more than 30 days, essentially the Sixers could block him from going to any team after next season in perpetuity. Like there's actually a provision in the CBA that legally, if he does that, they can control his entire career. It's insane. It's very punitive for a.
Well, then he would show up and sit on the bench and say,
yeah,
hangnail tear.
Yeah, but then again, they said, is he really going to do that in the last year of his contract when he's trying to get his last big payday? Is come in and look bad and get overweight and all that stuff.
You don't know, but I see where the smaller market teams are coming from, because you have to build through the draft, hope you can you got to make good trades. Your margin for error is so much smaller than the Lakers or the Heat or New York, which now the Knicks haven't drawn a whole bunch. They got Brunson, but it wasn't that long ago they got KD and Kyrie and Harden. I mean, look at what they got over there. That's New York. They're not lining up to go to Utah.
No, and he didn't name names, so I don't know specifically which teams are reaching out to Joe, but it definitely seems like there's a trend where small market teams are trying to kind of work together because, this is not a good trend going on, where these players are just kind of bullying their way to where they want to be. So there's that. Also, I think really people need to recognize that, like, this is Joe's career. Like, if he screws this up badly, if he just takes this horrible offer that Miami is putting out there, we don't really know the full details because there hasn't really been like a confirmed report of an actual offer. But if he botches this, he's never going to get another GM job. I mean, that'll be it. If the Blazers are sold, or if Jody decides that she wants him to be the fall guy, he's done. He will not get another job.
Well, and Miami is probably smart, and I think Riles probably knows this, that as long as they don't make an official offer, no one can officially say that that offer is crap. We can all say we think it will be crap because of what they have of it. There's not a lot of pieces they can pull. But until they make an actual offer, no one can say, all right, that is really, really garbage.
Yeah. But on the flip side, you've got Haynes with a report today that Miami's getting frustrated because Portland won't tell them what they want. But Joe, there was a report maybe a week ago where Joe said, make your best offer.
Right.
I mean,
what is that?
What's your best offer? Yeah. So clearly they don't think that Miami is making their best offer.
Because there's been, reports out that did Joe say this specifically in a press conference about, 3 or 4 picks and a couple of young players, or maybe somebody reported that that's what they wanted. It's like, well, okay, it's not Portland's job. We have the player. We have him for 4 years. It's not our job. We're going to come out. Well, you want to know what we want? We want Bam Adebayo. There. You happy now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was Fentress, actually, so I don't trust it. But
so that's not going to happen. So it's like, well, okay, you figure out what you can put together. We'll let you know whether it's good enough or not. We're not going to artificially lower, ourselves. And if we ask for equal value, they're not going to do that either. So it's kind of a sticking point. And Dame's can't put them in this spot.
Yep.
That's the only place he's going to go. So what negotiation is there? They have 2 future picks. That's all they have right now. Until they remove protection, they've got 28 and 30. That's it.
Yep.
Then they have the pieces to make it work, whether it's some combination of Lowry, Robinson, Hero, and then a couple of their young players because they signed the other Robinson. So Jovic and Hawkes. That's really all there is available. Oh, you could maybe Caleb Martin. Big deal. It's another 6'5" small forward who had one good run in his life. His career is not good at all.
Yeah.
He got hot. Good for him.
Yeah.
That's not a piece.
Yeah, I think
it was a piece for a few months.
I think the only thing Joe has said on record, because I'm not 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that the couple young players and 4 picks, I think that came from Fentress. But
okay.
All that Joe has said on the record was that, and he left it very open. He was like, whether this was that press conference he did at Summer League, was it early this week or last week? I can't remember. But essentially said, that they would accept a win now player, depending on who that is. They would accept young, talented players, or they would accept picks. But he left it very open. He didn't say, well, I want 4 picks. Because why would you do that? I kind of get the feeling a lot of people that are angry about how Joe is playing this have never negotiated anything in their life, because
you wouldn't. You're not going to open by showing
you don't open.
You're the person with the asset.
Yeah,
it makes 0 sense.
Yeah, and you say make me an offer.
They've never sat in a negotiating room. They're probably getting underpaid in their life because they're not working properly.
Yeah. Because that's one of the first things that companies do, right? Is they say, well, what do you want to make? Well, you don't ever want to say what you want to make, because then they're gonna stick with that, right? So you say, well, what?
No, but you have to be confident, and I help. This is my day job. I help clients with this negotiation. I mean, here's what you need to ask for. Oh, I'm uncomfortable asking for that. Well, then you need to put yourself in a position where you have the leverage to ask for that, because no hiring manager or no GM or whatever is ever going to come out and say, we want to give you the absolute most possible we can. No, their job is to give the least that they can possibly get away with. Your job is then to negotiate that up.
Yep.
And you have to be willing to walk away from that, which means you better have a backup. Well, in this case, Dame has limited that backup, or his agent has. So then there's no reason for Joe to come out and weaken the position he's already in.
Yep. No. Yeah, and it's interesting because, so, there was some reports today that essentially the Dame requested a trade in that meeting on that Monday before free agency, which was, I think, like the 26th or something like that. And that essentially that was under the auspice of, like, Joe's no longer going to sell this I'm building around Dame story. And, and then, of course, Joe comes out immediately after that meeting and says that they had a good meeting and that the plan is still to build around Dame. And the thing is, though, is it's like, if you're a GM, you're never going to want to come out and be like, yeah, I just had a terrible meeting with my player. He requested a trade. Who's got an offer? Who's got an offer for me? And the funny thing is, has that ever been done? No, it's never ever been done. Even Haynes is the one that reported that no GM has ever publicly, until Joe, no GM has ever publicly acknowledged a trade request until it was complete. Like, until they'd actually finished the trade, it's never been acknowledged. Not during Durant, not during Harden, never. And so Joe to actually come out after Dame did request the trade, that it leaked, and to acknowledge it was actually really significant. And so it's interesting to me because, first of all, if that were true, if Dame had said, don't go out and tell people that we're still on good terms and that you're trying to build around me, it was Dame's camp that leaked that they were having the trade, the meeting in the first place. Haynes got on Yahoo and was like, yeah, the meeting is happening today. That came from his own camp. So it's like,
we're pretty sure it wasn't Joe that called up Chris Haynes and said, here's what we're doing.
No.
So yes, that's where it came from. And so there's, repercussions, ramifications. And it would be interesting, and maybe it's later on or in the career or after retirement, say Dame moves back here, if there's some, maybe I should have done this differently. I'd never done it before. I'd never requested a trade, thought I was going to be here. I'd never been a free agent. And this is the way I handled it. And I maybe wouldn't have done that if I had to do it again. Who knows? Maybe he's perfectly fine with the way that it's going on. But if he is, he has to understand why that rubs some people wrong. You went and got every last dollar you could possibly get, and at the first legal CBA opportunity that you could,
you asked for a trade.
Me and to one team.
Yeah, and I just feel, a lot of the things that have happened over the last 3 or 4 months, Dame has been in the driver's seat. He's been out, he went out and did every single interview he could get his hands on. He made it extremely difficult to trade the pick. He made it extremely difficult to trade Simons, because teams knew we were in this desperate situation if we wanted to try to keep him. And then he immediately came out and shot us in the foot on trying to trade him to the Heat. So it's like, he's not making this easy.
This to a franchise that actually paid his cousin to play basketball.
For 2 years. Yeah. So I was not a Joe Cronin fan for, the first year or so of his career, as a GM.
It was hard to be, for sure.
Yeah, I was definitely not a fan of some of his trades, but I'm coming around. I think he's handled this summer, about as well as could be handled. Unfortunately,
right. Given a difficult situation, and it will still, no matter how, if he gets the absolute best he can possibly get, it's still not going to be a win. It will just be a measured loss. Okay, that's about as good as we could do given the circumstances. It's future picks. It's a young player that might be good. It's an asset here or there. That's all we could do.
Yeah.
Unless other teams come into this and it just opens up, or and someone decides, hey, Donovan Mitchell wanted to go to New York, that's where he wanted to go, and all of a sudden he's in Cleveland. All right. Somebody else steps up and says, screw it. We don't believe he's going to sit out, which most people don't now. He's likely going to play as long as it's not, Minnesota or, some place like that where it's just like, okay. And I don't think Portland would do that.
No.
I don't think they would trade him to a place like, they're going to trade him to somewhere where he's got the ability to, because originally it was to compete. It wasn't.
Yeah, that was what he said. Yeah.
The conference finals 2 or 3 times in the last however many years.
Yep.
He said he was open to Brooklyn. He said he was. I think there was 4 teams, and then he named Miami and Brooklyn. So now that it's just one, does he? No matter what Miami does, does he end up there? So what if they get a lottery protected first round pick for Hero? Is that enough to go? Okay, that with garbage picks in 28 and 30, that's enough for Dame now?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on
plus a guy who couldn't get off the bench last year.
Yeah.
Jovic. Okay, worst trade in history for a top 75 player.
I've been on the trade Dame bandwagon really since he kind of started to push this narrative a couple years ago, and it's because it became really obvious after that series with the Nuggets that we could not build a contender around Dame. Like, not at this point. The ship had sailed. Like,
it was too late.
It was too late. And, I'd been screaming for years that Neil was just wasting his prime and that, we wasted so many opportunities to trade CJ to the point where finally it just, we kind of gave him up for nothing. We gave him up to get the assets to get Grant, but still would have much rather had Paul George, a couple years earlier or whatever. But the thing is to me, I look at Dame, yes, there's all these emotions tied up in Dame, and there's all this nostalgia. But to me, I look at him as an asset. And he's an asset that has a finite value. And so if you hold on to him, let's say Dame never asks for a trade and we keep him for another 4 years. What's Dame going to be worth in 4 years?
Right.
Not what he's worth today, even if today he's not worth that much. But, 4 years from now, he's going to be worth almost nothing. So if we're rebuilding and we've been handed this amazing ace in the hole with Scoot and we've got Shaden, I would much rather convert Dame into assets, that can help the rebuild. So Miami,
right now Dame being here only tempers those young guys getting
holds
time
them back,
and developing and going, moving on. It's just like, okay, very likely none of them will be as good as Dame individually.
Yeah.
But it's still time to like, okay, that wasn't working. It hasn't been working for quite some time. This isn't laying blame on anyone's feet. It just, reality was it wasn't working. So,
I blame Neil, but yeah. I blame Neil.
That's where most of mine is too.
Yeah, I blame Neil.
Let go of CJ to save his life because that was his first real guy.
Yep.
Buchanan picked Dame.
Yep. So, well,
identified.
I guess just to kind of close things up because we're at a little bit over an hour, but I don't think Joe's as bad as a lot of people think that he is. I think
there's some people that think he's the devil.
He's the worst. Yeah, he's a liar. But I don't think he's as bad as people think he is. I'm going to kind of wait and see how this all plays out. Obviously I'm going to have a much lower opinion if he trades Dame for some horrible trade. But I like the way that he's played things so far. I think that right now we're in a war of public relations and in
a very slow time of year where nothing else
is going on. So it's a game of chicken. And right now I think Joe's doing a good job, and I'm hoping he holds the line. So that's where I'm at. we'll definitely keep checking in on this, but I think for now I'm okay with him the way this is going.
Yeah, I think it's the only way he can if he ever wants to have a front office job again.
Yep.
He's got to prove that he can make this not stink to high heaven, that it's just like, all right, did the best he could. That actually wasn't bad given the circumstance he was in. That's what he's, for the team, but also, for his career.
Yep. Well, Larry, I really appreciate you coming on again.
Pleasure, Nate.
Yep, I appreciate everybody tuning in and listening to us talk basketball, Blazer basketball. We are on Spotify now. If you just want to listen instead of watching on YouTube, I'm working on still getting us on like Apple and Amazon and some of the other options for podcasts. But we are on Spotify.
Well, and the obligatory, if you are watching on YouTube, rate,
and
review,
subscribe. And all that fun stuff. Yeah, click like and all that good stuff. Well, thanks again, everyone. We're probably going to try to post on weekends, semi-regularly. And if anything else breaks, we'll obviously try to get on and share our thoughts. But thanks again for joining the BlazerMetrics podcast, and we'll talk to you all again soon later.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.